May the odds be ever in our favor indeed. Welcome to the newest retro playlist here on my channel in the build-up to a new big blockbuster. This time around, this is in the build-up to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel. It's only fitting that I look at the four main movies in this saga. We're going to start it off with 2012's original Hunger Games movie directed by Gary Ross, starring the likes of Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks. The list goes on and on. And this is based off of the novel of the same name, of course, by the extremely gifted Suzanne Collins. I read this book when I was in middle school, and let me tell you, that original Hunger Games and that whole trilogy, I could not put any of those books down. I was hooked. So it's only fitting that the Hunger Games would be the next series of young adult novels adapted into movies, following in the footsteps of Harry Potter, and yeah, following in the footsteps of Twilight. This is a dystopian society set in what was once North America. The capital of what's now known as Pan Am maintains its hold on its 12 surrounding districts by forcing them each to select a boy and a girl, known here as tributes, to compete in a nationally televised annual event known as the Hunger Games. Every citizen must watch as the youths fight to the death until only one remains in gladiatorial combat. In other words, this is some pretty up stuff. Our hero in this story is tribute from District 12, the poorest district of them all, Katniss Everdeen, played here by Jennifer Lawrence. And when her younger sister is selected to compete in the 74th annual event, she famously volunteers to take her spot. And even though she's a gifted hunter and she's got sharp instincts, she's in an arena where she must weigh survival against love. Now, I was actually really excited to rewatch this movie because I remember really digging it when it first came out. And it was a big hit with critics and general audiences alike. And I give this whole entire series of the books and the movies massive props, mainly because it still instills so much fear in the reader and the viewer. And just in case you've never read or seen any of the Hunger Games movies, these four reviews in this playlist will contain some spoilers, so you've been fairly warned. Let's dig into this. First things first, I gotta go into the positives on this movie. The production design and the realization of this society, Pan Am as it's known. It is practically interchangeable with the image I had in the books of what Pan Am, the capital, what District 12. Pretty much every image I saw in the book was shown to me on the silver screen. It's very vivid and very clear imagery, and I absolutely love that. Technically speaking, The Hunger Games is still a very solid feature film with some great production design, great costumes and makeup design once you get into the capital, because the things those people do to their bodies is just, yeah. I also really dig the sound editing and the sound mixing, especially once you get into the arena. There's some great things that they do in terms of what the audience hears. Very similar to what the character of Katniss is starting to hear once she blows up this whole big pyramid of supplies for the favorites in the games. And I think it's all really well realized. I think the technical team has a lot to be proud of with this flick, including James Newton Howard, who I completely forgot composed the score for this. This is honestly, like, again, this is why James Newton Howard is one of my favorite composers. He gets the tone of any given moment just freaking right. In moments where these tributes should be in a state of panic, James Newton Howard will also have moments where he really signifies hope through the music. Because as President Snow says, hope is the only thing stronger than fear. And even though President Snow is a fucking asshole, he's right. And I think thematically speaking, that's why people love the Hunger Games so much. This is such thematically rich material told through a society that's kind of a cautionary tale in a lot of ways. And when these books originally came out in the late 2000s going into the 2010s, I feel like it made a lot of people rethink their strategies for living life. You know, so this way their successors don't turn out like they are in the Hunger Games. Another thing I really dig about this movie, it is really, really difficult to adapt a book into a movie just in general, but I gotta give The Hunger Games massive props because if you've never read the books, those are all written in first person from Katniss's point of view. And the movie has a lot of really clever little ticks to it to actually kind of convey a lot of Katniss's knowledge to the audience. But it's done in a very different way, because a lot of the knowledge that she has going into the arena, it's kind of conveyed to the audience through the commentary. That's given by Stanley Tucci's character along the way, as we kind of cut away to the commentators as they're narrating the action. Because I'll be honest, if you read the book, Katniss is very sharp, and she's watched the Hunger Games every single year, so she kind of knows what to expect going in, and she's kind of explaining to the reader what she's experienced. Imagine if you go in to watch the movie and Jennifer Lawrence just turns to the camera and explains all of her knowledge. That'd be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? So I gotta give this flick massive credit for integrating that point of view. Another positive, I mentioned Jennifer Lawrence. She was known going into this mainly for Winter's Bone and her work as Mystique in X-Men First Class. Say what you want about Jennifer Lawrence and her career, but I feel like the Hunger Games and her performance as Katniss in this entire series, this is what really skyrocketed her to superstardom. And it's hard not to see why when you look at her performances through this entire saga. She is so real. She's so real in this movie. You never feel like she's an actress. And not only do you feel sorry for her, especially towards the first act, but she's such an easy character to root for because of her resourcefulness, because of her heroics by just being herself. Because even though The Hunger Games is a reality television show, she is not faking any of her actions in the arena. Her alliance with Rue, her hatred for the career tributes as they're known for killing Rue, that is all so freaking genuine. And the romance between Katniss and Peeta definitely feels genuine in this, but I can understand the complaint that people might look at this and not feel like it was fully elaborated on, because the star-crossed lovers from District 12 was merely an angle to get Katniss and Peeta sponsors. But here, I don't want to say it feels glossed over, but it definitely feels a lot more genuine than it did in the books. And I think that's due in part to Lawrence's chemistry with Josh Hutcherson, who I've said many times, I'm a huge fan of this guy. Ever since he was a little kid, he seems to pick movies that gravitate towards someone like me. And Josh Hutcherson gets the tone just right, I feel like. He's very intense in certain moments, but he can also be very charming. He's got just the right mix. Josh Hutcherson is the man. I am rooting for him so much. I mean, this entire cast across the board is pitch perfect casting. The casting director did a marvelous job of picking the right people who, again, when I envision Haymitch Abernathy, I envisioned Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson is so freaking drunk in this. But as these kids' mentor, he still does have a lot of wisdom, but you can see so much troubled pain in this character as well. Just kind of goes to show that even if you make it out of the games and win the whole thing, that can scar you for life. And who can blame him? I mean, he's seeing kids in a haunting scene in a Capitol Mall Square thing where kids are running around with swords and they're reenacting the Hunger Games right in front of their parents who are very proud of them. Like, how f***ed up is that? I mean, the list goes on and on with this cast. Elizabeth Banks as Effie Trinket is freaking phenomenal. Liam Hemsworth, younger brother to Thor, plays Katniss's childhood friend Gale. And yes, this is probably the least amount of screen time he will get in this saga. His character, do not worry, gets more interesting in the sequel. But as much development as you see him have in the movie, his development in the book is not much to go off of either. Once you do get to the majestic nature of what the Hunger Games actually is, my God, it's like, imagine if you gave the Roman Empire from the BC era modern technologies. This is pretty much what I would envision them doing with it. And we meet a lot of great characters in the Capitol as well. Cinna, Katniss's stylist, is played by Lenny Kravitz, and he seems to be the most genuine person in the entire Capitol. And of course, you have Donald Sutherland as President Snow. Let's just say this. Donald Sutherland has such an amazing grasp and an understanding of this villain, and it only gets stronger as this series progresses. There's many reasons why this guy is a legend, but I feel like President Snow should be a huge notch in his belt. And once you actually do get into the arena, very similar to when I talked about Children of the Corn not too long ago, you just can't help but admire this young cast for how hard they're trying. And there's some future big names in this crop too. You have Jack Quaid playing Marvel from District 1. He would turn out to become Richie in the Scream reboot. And more notably, he'd go on to play Huey in The Boys. This was the start of Jack Quaid's ascent. I've also got to shout out Isabel Fuhrman as Clove, because she originally went into audition for Katniss according to a DVD extra. When she was told she was too young for Katniss, that did not deter her. So she went in and read for Clove, and she was so freaking menacing, which makes her demise all the more satisfying because her arrogance is eventually what gets her in the end. Yeah, there's a lot of great people in this. You have Deo Okenye tried. He played the big brute from District 11 who actually kills Clove. I really like this performance for the limited time he gets. But speaking of District 11, young Amandla Stenberg as Rue, I think, steals the whole show. She was freaking adorable. And spoiler alert, her death, ugh. God, it just, like, it drives a spear right through your heart. Wait a minute. Oh, God, no, that's terrible. No, okay. And her send-off is freaking beautiful, with Katniss's salute burying her in a meadow of flowers. And the uprising that goes on in Rue's district is freaking haunting as all hell. Because, again, a lot of this feels like it could happen in an alternate timeline. It's crazy how much of a grasp Suzanne Collins actually had on society, even back when she originally wrote this. In case you couldn't tell, I really enjoy this movie, but there's two big issues I have with it. First of all, I feel like Gary Ross, even though he's definitely a competent director, who definitely has a very good understanding of the haunting nature of this material, I don't know if he was necessarily the right person to direct this. And that all boils down to how he directs the action sequences. Ross has such a heavy over-reliance on the shaky cam technique, almost to the point where it's headache-inducing. This is especially prevalent in two cases. Number one is the initial cornucopia bloodbath when the games actually begin. And part of me kind of gets why you'd use the shaky cam in this instance, because it worked in Saving Private Ryan. It really made you feel like you were there on the field with the combatants. And also for monetary reasons. This movie would turn out to be PG-13. You kind of want to mask all the brutal blood and the gore. You want to make sure you get all those young adults in the theater without having to sneak them in so you can make as much coin as possible. I get it. But even when you get into the slower moments, the demise of Katniss and Peeta's final adversary, Cato, played by Alexander Ludwig, he's using shaky cam while they are just fighting on top of the cornucopia, and even while Ludwig is delivering this beautiful monologue he has at the end. Like, time and place for the shaky cam. And while I'm on that subject, this might just be me nitpicking because I loved the book so much, but this finale bugs me to no end. And usually this is where I would say I understand why a book being adapted into a movie is tough. Because like I said, you can't really keep everything that made the book special and translate it into movie form in enough time. But I think there was such a huge missed opportunity to make the ending of this movie even more poignant. See, these wolf-like dogmatations at the capital 6 on the 3 remaining tributes, these look like wolves that can eat you alive in seconds flat, intimidating enough. But in the book, these mutations actually had the eyes and the facial features of all the other dead tributes that came before that. Like, if you really wanted to dig into the darkness in this movie, include that. It's right there in front of you. But no, the movie just makes them look like boring wolves that you'd find anywhere else. It's a really bizarre choice, and I have no idea why they didn't capitalize on that. But as it sits, this first Hunger Games movie is very solid, anchored by a lot of great performances, namely from Jennifer Lawrence, who would go on to win Best Actress at the Oscars this same year. Great casting, great realization of the original source material. The direction wasn't really up to snuff for me, but you know what? It's still a really solid movie. I think it's the second best Hunger Games movie we've gotten so far. I'm going to give the Hunger Games a B+. The odds are certainly in this one's favor, guys. Let me know what you thought of this movie down in the comments section below. And let me know, what else from the book do you think was missed in this adaptation? Guys, I love discussing all new things in movies and entertainment over here on the regular. Everything involving Hunger Games you're going to be seeing on this channel in the build-up to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in a couple weeks. So do consider subscribing and tap on that thumbs up as well, because you don't want to miss a thing over here. And stay tuned for next time on this playlist when we talk about what I think is not only the best book entry, but the best movie entry as well. We're going to look at Catching Fire next time, guys. I cannot wait to dig into that with you. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence.